You were listening to the You Gotta Laugh podcast with your boy Edgar Robledo.
Turn it up, turn it up, turn it up.
Welcome back to the You Gotta Laugh podcast. After the gates open will be the topic of discussion tonight on the podcast. And joining me back on the podcast will be Will I Am. Will I Am, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, let's jump right into it. What was the very first moment outside prison that made you realize the world had moved on without you?
Wow. I guess, just when I first came home, it was just so many things that was different. I mean, there were cell phones, there were Bluetooth.
Mm-hmm.
People that I had grew up with, they now had children. They didn't have children before, so like my basically as soon as I was released, I could clearly see that time had marched on, and that things were very, very different.
I know you had on the prior podcast you had spoken about the Bluetooth, and there was it a female that was on the train
Correct.
or on the
I
bus?
was on the train, and the woman was sitting there in a window seat, and she was talking. And so one of the guys that I had got released with, I was like asking him. I was like, yo, something wrong with her? Why is she talking to herself like that? And he started laughing and told me, he said, nah, she's on a Bluetooth. So me not understanding what he was saying, I thought her tooth was blue. So I'm looking in her mouth trying to figure out what people got blue teeth out here now, and they could talk through they. I didn't understand what he was talking about at all, and so it wasn't until I found out later that a Bluetooth was actually a device that connects to a cell phone, and that you could talk through it and everything like that. But yeah, I thought the woman was having a mental episode, and she was just something wrong with her.
She's
Yeah,
nuts.
really.
How did outside look? Like the cars, of clothing.
Everything I remember it as like it was yesterday. Everything just seemed so. It just seemed so different. It seemed so surreal. Um, it was like having been in an environment, you know, um, where everything is like right on top of you. Everything is like miniaturized, for lack of better terminology. Um, Coming out and being in the free world, it was like everything was just so big, so large, so oversized, and it was at first it was kind of overwhelming, and it took me a moment just to gather myself and to really like say, okay, this is the free world. It's like you got this. But yeah, everything at first was kind of overwhelming.
Gotcha. Okay, on to the next. After 20 years of structure and routine, what has freedom taught you that prison never could?
Wow. Um, that freedom ain't free. Freedom ain't free. It's like um, I used to say all the time to people on the inside. I said, I had to come I had to come to prison in order to get free. And what I mean by that is, prior to my incarceration, the way that I was living and the way that I was moving, I was trapped. I was locked into a certain mentality, and I was locked into a certain way of living that I just didn't see any way out of it. And getting incarcerated made me understand and realize that the way that I was living and the way that I was moving, I was basically incarcerated. And getting incarcerated physically freed me from the incarceration that I suffered mentally. So it was through my incarceration being manifest in the physical that made me become unincarcerated mentally. And after over 20 years of physical incarceration, and then regaining um, my physical freedom, I looked at life completely different. I began to understand and cherish being able to go to the corner store and buy a candy bar, or being able to go get on a train and not having to be somewhere, um, not being told to be here or be there um, at a given time, or having those kind of time restraints.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. Next. What part of yourself did you have to leave behind in order to survive inside? And have you been able to reclaim it since? If that makes sense.
Um, wow. I don't know. Well, it's like when you go in, um, I think the biggest thing that people leave behind, or one of the things that I would say that I had to leave behind was being overly trusting. Um, there's a lot of deceit, unfortunately, in the system. Um, you don't know who to trust. You don't know what's real and what's not real, and it takes some time. Unfortunately, being in there, then you start to really learn your way. You know who you can deal with, who you can't deal with, things you should do, things you shouldn't do, and and that is what a lot of people don't understand. Becomes like a form of PTSD. Like you don't trust people right off. Like you don't let people get close to you because inside, people getting close to you could be very dangerous because you become responsible for them and they become responsible for you, so to speak. So what I mean by that, as an example, is if a person that you are affiliated with gets into um, a beef with Joe Blow, then when Joe Blow comes for that individual, they're gonna come for you too because for the simple fact they know that you and this other person are affiliated or that y'all be around each other. So that's why you have to kind of keep your affiliations and your associations like really small because somebody doing something that you don't know about could lead you to get hurt without even understanding like why you getting attacked or why somebody's coming at you. And so um for me, um being being home now, I've been able to reclaim that or to get that back, that allowing people to get close to me, but it wasn't easy. It hasn't been easy, and that's why sometimes people get labeled as being institutionalized or or something like that. But it's not that a person is institutionalized. It's just that allowing people to get close to you is not something that you've been able to do. Like for me, it was 20 years. So when you haven't allowed that to happen in over 20 years, and then being thrust into a world where that's like quote unquote normal, it's hard to make that adjustment at first. Yeah. But by the
Well,
grace of God, I've been able to reclaim it for the most part.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay, now how does time feel different to someone who's lived 2 decades with the clock controlled by others? Like it was like their time and now it's your time.
That's the part where that I was saying just a minute ago about that being institutionalized. It's like unfortunately for some individuals, they come home and they don't know how to structure their own day or their own to structure themselves or to structure their time because they're so used to someone else doing it for them. And that can be dangerous. That can be dangerous because a person could get really caught up and they could get frustrated. They could get sidetracked and drawn off into things. But one of the things that helped me is that although I was incarcerated, I remember one of my counselors telling me as if. And what I mean by that is I always carried myself in a mindset that um, although I was physically incarcerated, I never allowed my mind to be incarcerated. Once I was able to get myself mentally free and I lived in that space, when I got physically free, it wasn't such a hard transition because I lived in a situation where I structured my own time while I was inside. I made up my own day. I did my own programs. I did basically what I really thought and knew would be helpful for me. So upon my release, I just transitioned that over, and it wasn't hard for me. That aspect of it, it wasn't hard for me.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. What did you learn about human nature in prison that most people on the outside never see?
One thing that people don't understand is that although you made a mistake, and you may have done some of the most horrific things, you're still a human being. And people sometimes they forget that. They look at you um, as this monster, and that's all you are to them is this monster. And that's not a good way to look at your life or look at yourself as being just a monster. Because when you look at yourself like that, you 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 can easily do some demonstrous things and not feel it. It's almost as if you lose your humanity. And that's one of the things I refuse to allow my incarceration to strip away from me. Because I've seen individuals who allowed their humanity to be stripped away and they became what society, uh, the name or the title that society placed on them. They became that monster.
What did they do to allow that? What was their mental frame?
They just felt like that this is the way society sees me, so this is the way I'm going to act. And they
Okay.
and in that they just lost their humanity. Some guys felt justified in cutting or stabbing a guy merely because they looked at him, or they got off into homosexuality because they felt like, well, this is the norm here. It ain't nothing but men, and if you got a man that want to act like a woman, if I indulge intimately with that individual, then it's okay because that person wants to be a woman. He wants to be treated as a woman. And so in that they lose their grip on reality and they lose their humanity.
Now, do the people who work in the facilities have an impact also on incarcerated
Oh, most
individuals?
definitely. Most definitely. The way often you get during my time inside, you had individuals who treated us um horrific. They were very disrespectful. Especially when you went to the facilities that was way upstate and away from New York. They would call you uh, the N word like it was nothing, and dare you to say something back. They would call you boy. They would call Spanish people spicks. And so that's how they treated you. That's how they treated them. Now, that's not to say that there wasn't guards there that in those upstate facilities like Attica, like Clinton, um, Elmira. That's not to say that there weren't people there who treated us decently. However, the overwhelming majority of those officers at that time when I was there, um, yeah, they treated us. They treated us in a horrific manner. Those prisons was known to uh, treat prisoners very inhumane.
It's crazy. It is crazy. Okay. Is there a moment from your incarceration that still quietly shapes the decisions you make today?
Oh yeah, just my understanding of how I treat and react to people. My determination to define who I am and not allow others to define me for me. Like I said, that was one of the things I refused to let go of, was my humanity. And to this day, that's something that I did. I continue to do. I had a saying that I used to keep on my wall. Everywhere I went, I had this saying on my wall, and it simply said, "We the willing, led by the unknowing, doing the impossible for the ungrateful, have been led to do so much with so little for so long. We're now capable of doing anything with nothing." And I heard that in one of Dougie Fresh's songs, the rapper Dougie Fresh, and that became my mantra because that's how I looked at the entire incarceration experience. We the willing, led by the unknowing. Those who don't even know us, don't even know what our interpretation or our understanding of life is, or what we're trying to accomplish, or what we would like to accomplish. You know, have been led to do so much with so little. Like they throw you in a cell with nothing, and then they expect that to be your world. They expect that to be your home. That's your bathroom. That's your living room. That's your kitchen. That's your den. That's your front yard. Your back. That's everything in that little cell. And so, and you learn to make that space everything. You learn to make that and shape and mold that into your everything. And when you look at how much you accomplish in that little space with as little as you have or was given, you realize you can do anything with nothing.
Now, at what point did you connect that song with the incarceration? Did you hear it before?
No, I heard it while I was inside. Yeah, I heard that while I was inside.
Okay, now okay, now going back a little bit. The thing with the mentality, where you were like, you're not gonna let them break you. Now, did you get that from an old head that was in there that told you, yo, this is listen to this, and then it stuck, or did you it just come out
No,
of your head?
I was just listening to that song and I heard that and I began to really ponder that.
No, 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 no. N- not this. Before, when you said about when you were inside and mentally you were thinking like you weren't there, right? Physically you were there, but mentally you weren't there. How did you grasp that
Oh,
concept?
actually, it was a counselor because inside you also, I mean, I went in, I went in unfortunately when I was so young. So like the facility that I was in, we had along with correction officers, we also had correctional counselors who we had to see periodically. And it was one of my correction counselors that told me that you have to act as if you don't want people to treat you a certain way, then you have to act as if. That's what's gonna make you stand out. So like just to give you an example of what I'm saying, it's like some guys they walked around with their state greens on. They didn't they didn't care. They was wrinkled. They was dirty. I refused to do that. My state greens they was always clean. They was always pressed. I always had them tailored and everything. I refuse to walk around and look like I was broken. And that made me stand out. People, I mean, and you know, they allow you access to these things. They allow you access to an iron. They allow you access to an ironing board. They, uh, you're not supposed to, but you can if you want. You can tailor your greens, your state issue clothing. You can tailor them. You're not supposed to, but you can, and that's what I chose to do. And so when people saw me and in the manner that I presented myself, a lot of the guards, even though they wanted to treat me a certain way, the way I the way I was acting and the way I was responding made them it kind of forced them to treat me different because I didn't come across like everybody else. I didn't come out like I was this uneducated, broken, thuggish individual. I didn't come across that way. So it kind of forced them to have to treat me different and to respond to me different.
All right, all right. When people hear your story, what do they usually misunderstand the most about who you are now?
Some people they think that I'm that same person. Unfortunately, I went into the system when I was 16 years old. Um, I'm 57 years old now, and I've learned and gained a tremendous amount of insight, a tremendous amount of wisdom, and everything over those years. And a lot of times people try to place me in this box, like, oh, you're that person. I don't think that anybody is the same person 40 years removed from a situation. I don't think you're the same. I don't think that any one of us who are still alive today, walking the face of this earth, are the same person they were 40 years ago. I just don't think that. I think that time, I think that experiences shapes and molds you and changes you and everything like that. And a lot of times people react and respond to me like I'm that same person I was 40 some odd years ago. And that couldn't be further from the truth. All these years later, they think I'm that person or I'm that individual that did that. And I'm like, you don't even know what was the mitigating circumstances that caused that situation to come about or caused that to come about or to happen. And they try to like box me in and put me in this box where they say, oh, you're that same person or you're that person. And I'm like, you don't even know me. Like, you have no idea the person I was then and the person I am now.
Yeah, but that's like you said, that's all of us anyway,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? That's all of us. We're not the same. There's no way we
And
could be
so
the same.
that's what boggles my mind when people try to do that to me, because I look at them and I say, and sometimes it's people who weren't even born at that time, and I say, you don't even you wouldn't even know what life was like at that time. You weren't even on the earth, you weren't even born yet.
And what do you think it is about them people that have that viewpoint?
Just ignorance, sheer ignorance. That's what I attribute to that. Just sheer ignorance of not
Okay.
wanting, or not understanding that time changes people either for the better or for the worse.
And when they say things or you hear things, you keep it moving.
Basically, yeah, I look at them and I'm like, okay, obviously you're trapped in your own ignorance, and I refuse to allow your ignorance my become my ignorance. I refuse to. You the one with the problem, not me. I refuse to allow their problem to become my problem.
Okay. Anything else on that?
It's just people, like I say, sometimes people try to judge you and put you in a box. And I just refuse to be put in a box. I didn't allow it when I was in there, when I was inside, when I was incarcerated. I refuse to allow people to simply say, "Oh, you're nothing but an inmate. You're nothing but a prisoner. You'll always be just that." I refuse to accept that. I earned 2 college degrees while I was incarcerated. I earned over 200 certifications while I was incarcerated. I became a certified New York State certified HIV and AIDS peer counselor. Um, I became a certified um, hematologist. I could draw blood. Um, I did that despite my situation, despite my circumstance, because I refuse to allow people to put me in a box. And I carry myself as that today. People told me I would never get hired for the post office. My own cousin told me in my face, "We don't hire people like you in the post office." That's what she told me. And she can't even look me in my eyes today. When she see me, she put her head down. She don't. When I see her at family events and stuff like that, she just say, "Hey, how you doing?" and keep it moving, keep her head down, because she can't look me in my face. Now it's 7 years in the post office. What do you tell me now?
Hmm. All right. Okay. Next up, how do you rebuild trust with others and with yourself after losing so many years?
Um, I just I one day at a time, one day at a time. I think that um when people see me for me and they understand who I am, and when they hear an interview like this and they see that, oh, there's way more to him than just that. He's multi-dimensional. He's just not one dimension. He's just not one mindset. Um, People start to understand that. Oh wow, yeah, he is more. He's deeper than that. There is more to him than that. So there's an old Jewish saying. It says if you wanna get revenge on your enemies, live well. And so that's what I do. People who always uh, put me down or try to put me down, whenever they see me now and they see how I'm living, that's my payback to them. Cause I drive, I nice clothes by the grace of God. I got jewelry, money in my pocket. I'm not, thank God, I'm not homeless. I'm not begging out on the street or anything of that nature. Thank God. I still have all of my faculties. Thank God. I'm healthy. Um, And so that's my way of paying revenge to my enemies, people who put me down and said, I would never amount to anything. And that's the way I continue to build trust with myself, by treating myself accordingly, by living the best way that I know how, and know that I can live as a decent human being, and acting and being a decent human being.
Okay. All right. Um, here's a good question. Do you believe the person who entered prison still exists, or was someone new formed in that space?
Oh, that person that went to prison definitely doesn't exist anymore. Uh, um, but yeah, for sure. Um, prison definitely made me. Prison definitely made me a whole different person. Um, my experiences in there, good, bad, and indifferent, um, definitely made me a different person. Different. I mean, I grew up unfortunately in prison. I went in as a teenager, and I came out as a grown man. I came out at 37 years old. So just in that in itself, it says, hey, I went in as a kid and I came out as an adult. So, you know, and as like it says in the Bible, when I was a child, I did child things. But when I became an adult, I had to start doing adult things. And that's not to say that I haven't lost a significant amount of time. And I tell people this, people don't understand it. I tell people that physically, I'm 57 years old, but emotionally, when I look at my life through the spectrum of the years that I spent incarcerated, emotionally, I'm probably somewhere in my late 30s, early 40s, because I haven't gone through the the rigors and the everyday ups and downs that the average or quote unquote normal 57-year-old has gone or been. And although by the grace of God I've been home now 20 plus years, um, that's about what I have. I'm, like I said, emotionally, I'm about late 30s, early 40s, emotionally.
So that was your biggest arrested development. It was emotionally.
Correct. Because I didn't go through. I never went to a prom. Um, I didn't have my own first apartment until I was 38 years old. Um, I didn't have my first vehicle until I was in my 40s. So everything that a 21-year-old or yeah, a 21-year-old or a 22-year-old would have experienced, I didn't experience those things until I was in my 40s and my late 30s.
In that space. Okay. All right. Um, if you could speak to your younger self on the day before your sentence began, what truth would you tell him, knowing what you know now?
Wow. Uh, to stay focused, to stay grounded, and to be humble, and to remain humble, because those are the things that got me through all those years. I stayed focused on the fact that I knew one day I would be free, um, and I kept my eye and my focus on that, and I worked toward that every day. Not some days, every day. Whether it was a good day or a bad day, I kept believing and working toward that. And I stayed humble. I stayed humble.
For people who don't know what it's like, what if you didn't follow those things, right? what would have been the outcome?
More time, longer, a longer period of incarceration, and or possibly losing my life, because I could have easily found myself, and I had found myself in some situations where if I had went left instead of right, I could have gotten a whole bunch more time and or lost my life. There were those days and those situations that I found myself in where I had to be uh, critical of my actions and critical of my thinking, and stay humble. And sometimes that wasn't popular, but it was what I needed to do in order to survive the experience. And I knew that. And there were other people around me who also drummed that into me, like, yo, look, you might want to go this way with this, but you're gonna lose. There's no win by going down this way. And I had to accept that. As hard as it was, I had to accept that. And I seen individuals who didn't heed that advice wind up with more time. And I seen individuals who went that other way and lost their life.
Incredible, crazy. Incarceration is
It
crazy,
is, unfortunately, in
right? It's a whole
a
different
whole
world.
different world, very much so. And people don't understand that. People, and like I said, the main thing that people forget about individuals who unfortunately become incarcerated is that um, you're still a human being. The United States is the only industrialized country that incarcerates, and not only incarcerates but lock away 12, 13, and 14-year olds for life. We're the only industrialized country that does that. I mean, I couldn't imagine being 16 and having forever. But there are individuals in the system who are just like that. I know people right now who have forever and have been locked up for 30, 35, 40 years, and they're still inside.
Wow, wow, wow. Another question I always think about is, would your time have been, I'm not going to say easier, whatever word you want to use, more comfortable, better, if you didn't get moved around from facility to facility? Like, if, let's say they sent you to Denamora and you did all those years in the same place, would it have been different, or no, the same shit?
No, it definitely would have been different. Um, and the reason that I say that is because the things that I learned in a facility, let's say like Sing Sing, which is where I did the bulk of my time at. The things that I was permitted to do in Sing Sing, I would never have been allowed to do in a place like Dannemora. In Sing Sing, I was able to really act. I met the Billy Crystal in Sing Sing. I met the Robert De Niro in Sing Sing. I met the Charles Dutton in Sing Sing. I was able to act with these individuals on a stage, in a facility, in a place like a Dannemora or Comstock. That would have never been permitted.
Hmm. Okay.
So the fact that I was able to wind up in a place like Sing Sing and do the bulk of my time in a place like Sing Sing as opposed to doing my time in a place like Comstock, Dannemora, or Attica, it made a difference. It made a hell of a difference.
My, okay. All right. All right. All right. All right. Any finishing, ending um thoughts you like to put out
No,
there?
I just would like people to know and to understand that um don't believe everything that you hear. Don't believe the hype. Um, everybody is not uh what you might think they are, or as bad of a person as you might think they are. Um, and, like the old saying goes, don't judge a book by its cover. You know, try to get to know the person, ask a question, and things of that nature. You might find out what you thinking and what you believe in is totally different.
Right. I tell people that the real world happens outside of your head.
Exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
it's just how it is.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I am. Um, thanks again for coming on, sharing your story. Um, good to hear. Good to hear from
Appreciate it.
you.
Appreciate it.
Great
Thank you.
job, like
Thank you.
always. And we go from
All right,
here,
my
right, my
friend.
friend?